I have been collecting data for about 40 years from close to 400 Fortune 500 companies and also a lot of others, some government agencies. And I'm always interested in things like risk and value. The software industry has created enormous wealth. Look at Bill Gates. Look at Ellison with Oracle. Look at Steve Jobs. Many, many millionaires and quite a few billionaires and hundreds of wonderful inventions that we use every day. But it's also come with some risks that we'll talk about. Identity theft, for example, denial of service attacks, viruses, things that we never had before. So we'll talk about both sides of that equation, the value that software has been creating and also some of the problems that have come along with that value. Now, this particular slide deals with some of the information that chief information officers need to know about software risks. The odds of outright cancellation of projects, which happens to be about 15% overall and close to 35% for big systems. The odds of litigation for outsourced projects. Unfortunately, that happens far too often, about 5% of them. I work often as an expert witness in some of these cases of litigation, and it's always unpleasant to see projects that go so far in the wrong direction that they end up in court. And I might say that neither side seems to get what they want when it comes to court. So it's much better to have a good contract and do the job well rather than to try and recover anything through litigation, because that's seldom satisfying to either side. The odds of significant schedule delays by more than 3 months, that comes up very often in projects, and the bigger the project, the greater the odds of a long delay. Partly due to creeping requirements, but another even deeper reason is poor software quality. The main reason that big projects run late is they have too many bugs in them when testing starts, and that stretches out the testing cycle to 3 or 4 times longer than originally planned. So in order to eliminate that risk, you have to go back before testing begins and do things like static analysis and inspections, and that will speed up the testing process and raise your probability of finishing the thing on time. Same kind of issue with major cost overruns of more than $250,000. All of these are relatively common. And by the way, the blue asterisks, those indicate the kinds of risks that my tool, Software Risk Manager, can predict before requirements start. And I do that by pattern matching. I take a taxonomy of the kind of project that a client is going to do in the future, and then I sort through the 20,000 or so projects that I've collected data on in the past, and I tell the client all the risks that have already occurred for the same size, shape, and nature of project, so they can see from historical risks what kind of risks they're going to be facing in the future. I can't do that for all risks because there are hundreds of them, but I can do it for most of the common risks like schedule delays and cost overruns. Now, continuing on with this risk list, odds of poor quality for major COTS packages. If you've ever tried to deploy, for example, an ERP package, you quickly discover that there's quite a lot of bugs in it that probably shouldn't be there. It takes longer to get deployed than you think it should. So that's another risk we have to deal with. The commercial software quality is sometimes not as good as it should be. And then CIOs also need to know benchmarks from competitors in the same industry. If you work for a particular bank, and there are hundreds of banks, how does your software stack up against all the other banks? Same kind of thing is true with insurance or manufacturing. How does your software compare to other companies that do the same kind of work that you do? And then finally, the last one is factors causing poor satisfaction, poor customer satisfaction, with poor quality and then poor service being the 2 top reasons. Another reason is very complex, arcane telephone answering systems that you have to push dozens of keys before you could get to a live person. And when you get to a live person, sometimes they don't speak English well enough for them to understand your questions or you their answers. So these are key factors that lead to dissatisfaction. Now, what do they need to know? What do CIOs need to know about software value? There's 2 flavors or several flavors of value that companies are concerned with. If you're going to sell the software or market a product that runs by software like a telephone switching system, you want to make money with it. So obviously revenue streams is the big thing there. On the other hand, if you're building the software for your own internal use, you don't plan to sell it, you plan to actually use it in your company, then what you want to do for the value of that kind of software is to reduce your operating costs. So we have 2 separate divergent sets of values. The commercial companies want to make a lot of money, and the internal users of the software want to lower their their operating costs by providing faster turnaround and doing other things with software. Now, both sides want to increase market share from novel applications. Whether you're trying to sell them or just use them internally, you get an interesting market share if you do interesting things, which is one of the reasons why Apple has become the wealthiest company in the world. Is they've done a large number of relatively novel things. Same with Microsoft. They've also done novel things too. You also get enhanced corporate prestige due to novel applications. In fact, the more of these you have, the more prestige you get. You get enhanced customer satisfaction from high quality levels. In fact, if you read the software literature, you can see the companies that provide the best customer satisfaction and the best quality, and you can see that there's a close correlation. The best quality levels and the best customer service have the happiest customers. You can also save money by reducing rework costs from high quality levels. In fact, we were delighted to find in IBM, when we started using inspections on major software projects, not only did the quality improve, but we were shortening our development schedules by 15%, lowering our maintenance costs by 45%, and making sometimes as much as a 25 to 30% improvement in customer satisfaction, primarily by using inspections and improving quality. And the final thing you get are competitive advantages from being best in class. And you can see that very easily by looking at the 100 best companies to work for or any of the other national rankings, like the Forbes rankings and the Fortune rankings that compare companies. You can see that the best companies have the biggest market shares, the happiest employees, and the happiest customers. Now, these are some of the best benchmark types that are of interest to top management, mostly in large corporations. Industry best practices. For example, what are the industry best practices in terms of development methods? There are 35 of them that we have data on. For example, requirements modeling is a good one. Team software process is a good one. Rational unified process is a good one. Agile is a fairly good one for small projects. Actually, very good for small projects. Doesn't scale up as well. Some, on the other hand, turn out to be expensive and troublesome, like pair programming is very expensive, and the claims of better quality are not quite valid because most of the claims don't do comparisons between pair programming and static analysis and inspections, which actually have better quality for lower costs. So in any case, industry best practices are something top management wants to know. Industry security practices, which are becoming increasingly important. And by the way, here's something that I'll recommend to everybody because it's free and it's very good. I happen to live in Rhode Island in the congressional district of Congressman Jim Langevin. He's the co-chairman of the Congressional Cybersecurity Caucus, and they put out a very powerful and effective monthly newsletter about security for both government organizations and also corporate practices, and it's completely free. So I will send to Michael Valutis information on how to acquire a subscription to this free service provided by Congress, and it's one of the rare things that Congress does where the Republicans and the Democrats actually cooperate and seem to get along, because the co-chairman is a Republican. Langevin is the one I know because I live in his district. But it's an excellent summary of quality topics, and it's free, and I think it's the best available service, and it comes out pretty often, once a month. Okay, continuing on with the slide, failure rates by application size. As it happens, the bigger the project, the greater the odds of failure. For little projects below 100 function points, they almost never fail. When you get up to massive systems of 100,000 function points, over half of them fail. Fail in the sense that they never get completed and they never get delivered because they cost too much and they take too long. Like some of the big FBI systems that fail, some of the other classic ones that show up in the literature. Other benchmarks are security tax within industry, and you can get that from a number of companies, including this Congressional Cyber Caucus. Development schedules by application size. Here's a very quick and easy way of getting